Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another blue sky evening for a Academy of Cheese webinar, all about our wonderful award Affineur of the Year and our competition. Academy of Cheese is welcoming you tonight. We would love you to put where you're joining us from in the chat, please. We want to see where you are in the world. I'm in Norfolk, just been for a quick walk along the beach with my friend's dogs, which was very lovely beforehand. Patrick's in Brighton. Hello from Ghent in Belgium. Wonderful. South London. Love it. Felixstowe, and they've got sunshine. Stuttgart. Hello. Hi. And Washington, D.C. Amazing. I love these webinars. I love it. Scottish borders. Philadelphia. Chile. Oh my God. Minnesota. Amazing. Fantastic. Fantastic. Keep telling us. Surrey. Hello, everyone. Sven Eric.
Ben Eric,
Hello.
Richard.
Sven Eric is going to be one of our judges this year for Affineur of the Year. So I've got Patrick here joining me on who's going to host the webinar tonight. And we've got legendary cheesemakers with us, but he's going to introduce those. And in the meantime, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the competition this year. So the finals are on the 3rd of June at St Mary's Church in Marylebone. We went to look at the venue yesterday, Rachel and I, and it is glorious. It's still beautiful, so we're very excited. It's a lot bigger than our previous venue, so I hope lots of you are able to make it. I know some of you are all over the world. We have a few international visitors. If you can make it, it is the most exciting day. So this year we have 5 cheeses in the competition. We have the stalwart, the original cheese from the competition, the Quicke's cloth-bound cheddar. We then have the Mary's doing us a little whoop whoop in the corner there. We have blue Shropshire from Cropwell Bishop. So we've gone a little bit left field from blue Stilton, and we've gone to blue Shropshire. We've got Fen Farm Dairy's Baron Bigod. We have, hi Jonny, we have a new cheese this year, the Trethowan Brothers Amazing Gorwydd Caerphilly. Hi Ben. And we also have Rogers from White Lake Cheeses. We have Solstice. So exciting new cheese, new venue, and we also have a brand new prize for the winner of Affineur of the Year this year. Mons Formation, who run a week-long affinage course in France, have offered that course to the winner, which is so exciting. Amazing prize. I think there's a lot of previous winners wanting to go back and rewind the clock and do it all again. So this year we have 17 competitors. 6 of those are makers, cheese makers, and 11 of those are cheesemongers. And this is probably the only competition, cheese competition, that puts cheese makers and cheesemongers on the same platform. I haven't heard of it anywhere else. So I'm going to hand over to Patrick now, who's going to talk to each of the cheesemakers. Patrick, for those that don't know him, is our cheese librarian at the Academy of Cheese.
Should put my spectacles on.
He may have written a couple of books. Can you see?
What these ones here, you mean? Just sat up on my shoulder.
Yes, just a couple. So the philosophy of cheese that he wrote for the British Library, quite highbrow that one. And then the cheese life that he wrote with Matthew Carver, who owns the cheese bar restaurants, who's just about open a pick and cheese in Berlin. So any of you in Germany over there listening along, that's exciting news. And you co-wrote that book, didn't you? Oh, Keith's telling. Yeah. Keith's here. Hi, Keith. He's saying available in all good bookshops.
It is, yes.
Absolutely. Sorry, end of plug. You can buy tickets for Affineur of the Year, but I'll tell you about those at the end. Okay, Patrick, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to disappear and you're going to talk to Mary first, aren't you? So I'm going to bring Mary in. And I'm
Okay,
going to
yeah.
place the spotlight. Oh,
It's Mary. Lovely.
I'm going to bring you back as well. There you go.
Great stuff. So we're ready to go. Brilliant. Hello, Mary. Where are you, Mary? You look like you're in New York or something.
I'm in at Reading Station, and I've just been to visit the great and amazing Val Bynes, who's as a cheese technologist has been such a contribution to cheesemakers all around the UK and wider Canada, all over the place. And yeah, and she's not well, so
Oh, oh.
I wanted to go and visit her in hospital.
Oh, well, pass on our regards to her. She's a legend of, I mean, she's taught pretty much every cheesemaker in Britain, it seems to me, at one point or another. Um, so what we're going to do, Mary, to
Pretty
begin
much.
with, if you could introduce Quickes very quickly, you know, I think probably everyone knows who Quickes are and what you do, but perhaps there are a few people on the call that don't. So tell us a bit about Quickes.
Okay, so we make cheese on our farm in Devon. We graze our cows very much on grass for 10 and a half months a year, from Valentine's Day till Christmas. So probably one of the most grass fed of the cheeses that I know. And those cows are crossbred cows, producing exactly the right milk for our cheese, as well as animals that are happy to graze outside. We make cheddar and other hard cloth-bound cheeses. We use our wonderful heritage starters, which were collected from the best cheese dairies in the 1960s and 1970s in the southwest of England, and they're sort of multi-strain, originally from whey starters, so really producing wonderful complex flavors, you know, on that grass-fed milk. And then we make our cheddar using mostly animal rennet, but some vegetarian rennet, hand cheddared, handmade, small vats, 1,000-gallon vats, and make them in a cloth-bound cheeses, and we store them typically for, well, the youngest we sell will be 3 months, a year, and then up to 2 years.
So, I mean, that's I suppose the maturation side of things is a lot of people will be very interested to know what you do. So your cheeses, sort of typically the cheddars that have been sent out to the contestants were sent out when they were very young. And so on a normal day with a normal cheese that you keep in your cheddar store, what happens in your maturing rooms? What, you know, because actually I think having a few tips and tricks from the Queen of Cheddar would be quite helpful to some of our affineurs. I mean, it's a bit late in the day now because they've been maturing their cheeses for the best part of a year, haven't they? But what do you do in the maturing room to make your cheeses the best they can be?
Well, obviously they're cloth-bound cheeses, so they can breathe all the time. They can lose moisture. They gain the microflora of the store, and that's one of the amazing things about naturally naturally rinded cheese, is that they've got the microflora of the particular store, while the species of bugs, organisms may be the same in every cheddar store on the planet. Actually, the subspecies belong to us, and that's just what arises from the store. We keep our store, and mostly our cheeses we keep at about 9 to 11 degrees centigrade, about 50 degrees Fahrenheit for those people joining from the United States. 85 to 87 relative humidity, so that the cheese can develop a lovely the microflora that kind of belongs on a cheddar, not too moist, not too dry. And we also turn those cheeses once every 10 days to make sure that the moisture stays equal throughout the body paste of the cheese.
So some of the contestants might have received your beautiful cloth bound cheddar, and they might have taken the cloth off, or they might have rubbed it in all sorts of. I mean, in previous years we've seen a cheddar rubbed in paprika, for example, and
that was amazing.
Yeah, so the cloth's interesting. What does the cloth do? Because obviously there's lots of block cheddar that people be familiar with, which has been aged in plastic bags, but yours is wrapped in muslin. What's the muslin soaked in? What do you have?
The muslin soaked in lard or a vegetable oil for vegetarian cheeses, and it's there to sort of slow the moisture loss, and it also creates its own particular environment because it's slightly moist, you know. So so it collects all the molds and yeasts and all the other amazing things that live on bacteria that live on cheese rind. For us, if we don't put a cloth on the cheese, we would find it would crack. But obviously you could if you continue to rub it with lard or wash with brine, you would create a completely different effect. And that's what's been amazing about Affineur of the Year, actually seeing what happens to our cheese when people bring that whole breadth of imagination to it, and you know that so many things are possible.
If you were talking about the sort of natural microbiome of your cheddar stores, which are sort of unique to you, so have in the past contestants matured the cheese in quite a traditional, conventional way, but just in a different cheddar store in another part of the country? Have you seen quite big differences then? If I matured your cheddar in my garage, for example, which is a cool, dark, damp place, but would it end up tasting completely different because I'd have a different microbiome in that room compared to what you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, what was amazing is that perhaps the origin of the Affineur of the Year competition was when we swapped a cheddars with Jamie Montgomery, and his cheddar matured in our store was different to the cheeses matured in his store. His cheese matured in his store, and the same. So you are creating a completely different cheese. You know, the microflora is different. The moistures will be different. The temperature will be different. Other people have matured cheeses. Lots of people have matured cheeses slightly higher temperatures, which will bring forward the acidity. You know, as the cheese loses moisture, you know, its maturation changes. It gains acidity. It will that creates a different breakdown of the proteins. Yeah, so as you know, people have different eyes and different things they're doing, and which creates extraordinary differences right to the heart of the cheese.
Last year's winner was T. Couse, who took your cheddar and aged it in a kind of coal, they made a cave of coal, because obviously they're based in Wales and there's a long heritage of coal mining in the area, and that seemed to have an effect on the cheese that was, you know, gave it its own unique character just by changing the material.
It was extraordinary. I mean, it was such a lesson in like flexibility and how to see things and what's possible.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, Mary, we're gonna at the end of the call, we're gonna have some time where we're all the cheesemakers are going to come on and we can answer questions. If people have questions as we're going, please put them in the chat and I'll try and put them to our cheesemakers. But there'll also be time at the end. But I'm aware we've got a lot of cheesemakers to get through. So thank you very much, Mary. That's really great. Very interesting. Where are we moving next? Oh, we're moving on to Ben in Trethowan's. Hi, Ben. Look,
hello.
Trace is going to spotlight you. There you go.
Hello.
So, Ben, tell us about yourself. Tell us about Trethowan's and the cheese, because I know you for two cheeses. Tell people which cheese has been sent out to our contestants in Affineur.
Okay. So, I'll first start with a little bit about Trethowan Brothers. So, I'm not one of the brothers. The two brothers are Todd and Morgan Trethowan, who started making cheese way back. That makes me feel old to say way back, but way back in 1996. And they started, Todd kind of got the cheese bug working at Neal's Yard Dairy, just as a on the counters. Decided he loved that kind of environment, the cheese world, and from that point decided, right, I want to make cheese. It's not just selling cheese. I want to learn to make cheese. And he went around the country, did a few apprenticeships with various cheesemakers, and the cheese that he fell in love with was Duckett's Caerphilly. And he learned from Chris Duckett how to make the Caerphilly. Chris Duckett was very happy to share the recipe with Todd, and Todd took it back to his farm, his parents' farm in Wales. The farm was called Gorwydd Farm, and that's really how Gorwydd Caerphilly was born. After a year, Todd decided, blooming heck, this is really hard work, making cheese by hand. I want someone to help me. I know I'll convince my brother to join me, and he convinced Morgan to come and join the family business. And ever since then, we've been making Gorwydd Caerphilly, following pretty much the same recipe as Todd learnt from Chris Duckett all those years ago. I joined the Trethowan Brothers 10 years ago now, when the farm moved from Wales. So it was originally on their parents' farm, on Todd and Morgan's parents' farm in West Wales, Llandough Brefi, and they moved 10 years ago to Somerset. The head cheesemaker at the time didn't want to move with the farm and decided he would stay around to teach someone else, and that someone else was, luckily for me, it was me. I learned how to make Gorwydd Caerphilly. Since then, we decided that we ought to make another cheese, just because we were so close to the village of Cheddar, and so we also make the Pitchfork Cheddar. So it was very interesting listening to Mary talk about cheddar cheese, and so much of it made total sense listening to her.
Yeah, and so Pitchfork is also another cloth-bound traditional cheddar, but it's the Caerphilly. It's Gorwydd. I mean, you pronounce it beautifully, Ben. I have to say, is there some Welsh in you there?
No, years of selling Gorwydd.
But that's the cheese that's gone out to contestants. So Gorwydd is a much younger cheese than cheddar. So how long typically would you mature that for?
So any Gorwydd peaks anywhere between 8 to kind of 12, maybe even 16 weeks. But generally you expect, or we would expect Gorwydd to be peaking between 8 and 12 weeks, certainly at this time of year. And there is seasonal variation. Sometimes the winter cheeses, I think, you can take on a little bit longer, and that's to do with the variation in the milk. But this time of year,
and for people who don't know Gorwydd but perhaps know Caerphilly, often people know Caerphilly from the sort of the block supermarket Caerphillys that you find wrapped in plastic. But Gorwydd's a very different beast, isn't it? Because when you mature it at Trethowan Brothers, you get this wonderful grey sort of brown, it's multi-faceted coat developing on it, haven't you?
It was an amazing experience. Probably my first month working at Trethowan Brothers. So I'd been a cheesemonger for kind of 14 years. So I knew the finished product really well. I'd been selling Gorwydd for years and years. It was one of my favourite cheeses as a monger. But when I first went to Trethowan's to learn to make the cheese, the first job they give you, because you know nothing about making cheese, so the first job they give you is turning the cheeses. And I just naturally assumed that you would start with the oldest cheeses and work your way backwards. So you're almost inoculating the younger cheeses with molds from the first one. And the head cheesemaker at the time, Rob, said, no, that's completely wrong. It's vital that you have a really nice succession. And so you always start with the youngest cheeses and work your way up. And that's because, as you described it, Gorwydd has this incredibly beautiful velvety grey rind, and it's actually a very tactile cheese. So not many people say, when you get this cheese, give it a stroke. But with Gorwydd, I definitely recommend stroking the cheese, and a healthy rind on Gorwydd is wonderfully velvety and kind of quite soft.
So, but what's interesting, so when did you send the cheeses out? Did they have a rind when you sent the cheeses out?
When we discussed getting Gorwydd in as one of the cheeses with Tracy. We said, we've got to send it out before anything develops. And so this succession I was talking about, you've probably got a week before anything really starts to happen. Once you get to 1 week old, you'll start to see little white patches of Penicillium candidum. And then gradually over the subsequent weeks, you'll see these wonderful molds developing. And actually, when it was really interesting hearing Mary talk about the unique microbiome of your storerooms, that was something that we were very aware of, or rather Todd and Morgan were very aware of when they moved the dairy from Wales to Somerset. They brought a whole load of whey from Caerphilly production in Wales, and they had this beautiful, spotless, sterile new dairy, and they chucked loads of barrels of this whey from Gorwydd Farm down the drains, all over the walls in the storerooms, and they left it to kind of almost to charge that environment, to inoculate the sterile environment, because these maturing rooms, you don't want them to be sterile. The risk is if it's too sterile, bad molds, bad bacteria can develop. Whereas if you've got this wonderful, healthy, diverse flora that produce the rinds that we're looking for, you get really delicious cheeses.
And so actually, some of the contestants might not go down the Gorwydd route, the traditional route of a grey velvety rind. They might take it. They you know, it could end up in all sorts of different directions.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see some really exciting things. The beauty about Gorwydd, and I think this is one of the reasons I think it's been included, is the cheese itself is quite a neutral cheese. It's wonderfully easy to guide. So the traditional way that we mature it, you get the rind developing, you get a lovely layer of breakdown, you get this mushroomy flavour from the rind. But there is a cheese called Tornigus that uses this type of Caerphilly as the base, and it's a washed rind cheese, and it tastes completely different.
And
so
that was a James Aldridge cheese, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And it was washed in wine, was it? Is that right? It was wine with herbs in
a herb flavored wine. It's quite an intense flavor that you develop on the rind. So it really is a great vehicle for seeing what crazy, well, just the imagination of the affineurs.
Could you even take it down the blue route? Could you make a blue cheese out of Caerphilly?
You could. We very, very rarely, occasionally we'll get some blue developing in Gorwydd. It doesn't happen very often. It happens more in the cheddars, but it doesn't taste that nice. It tends to produce a slight bitter flavour, but that could just be where it's interacting with the molds and the rind that we get naturally. And if you've intentionally turned it blue, perhaps you won't get that. So I would be really, this whole competition is wonderful because it opens up your imagination to what's possible.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Ben. We better move on, but we'll talk again at the end. I love Gorwydd Caerphilly. It's one of my all-time favourites. I'll be honest. It's a cheese it's a sort of cut and come again cheese. You can sort of I can eat a lot of Caerphilly. Really, it's sort of lunch, breakfast, dinner. It's a sort of, all day, every day. Anyway, brilliant. Let's move on.
Ben. We've got a couple of questions
now. Let's
Patrick.
go to Roger.
And while Roger's joining, can we answer a question, which is a good one for you, because actually you are head of judges for the competition.
Yeah.
Patrick has the very important job of keeping all the judges in check.
Yeah.
So Keith is asking, is there a way that we judge?
Let's come back to that, because as usual with Keith, rather than one question, he's asked about 5 there. So it's typical journalist. I can say that because I am a journalist and I'm good friends with Keith, by the way. So he'll get that. But it's a really good questions. So we'll come back to that at the end.
I can share the judging form if you want with
it's
the
a tricky one
scoring.
actually, because there's some wacky, people do some quite wacky things, and you can be seduced by the novelty. But let's come back to that. There's lots to talk about. Was good friends, says Keith. Right,
just
Roger,
ditched
hello.
you.
Tell us about yourself, White Lake,
Hiya.
and your cheeses very quickly.
I'm Roger Longman, third generation farmer in Somerset. Parents and grandparents used to be cheddar makers. I didn't want to follow the tradition, so I decided to do something different. So started milking goats and make a ridiculously large range of goats cheeses. And then I thought, oh, there's some really nice cow's milk around here. We'll make some cow's cheese, and I'm now making lots of sheep's cheese as well. So I think we've got 4 new cheeses this year. I think you've had one the other day. Yeah, so I've always said to people who are looking to be cheesemakers, and they say, well, what should we make? And I said, well, make what you like. You know, it's so much easier to make a good cheese if it's something that you like to eat yourself. So my favorite cheese is Le Poisse. I don't quite like the sliminess of the rind, so I really wanted that washed rind. I love that meaty punch you get from the rind, so I wanted to try and have my version of that, which is what our Solstice is. It's Jersey cow's milk from a farm 3 miles up the road, primarily grazed grass. Yeah, lovely herd, fantastic herdsman. Really pleased with the quality of the milk we get. And I think, you know, Mary talked earlier about the importance of cows and what they eat. And it's so much easier to make a good cheese when you start with really quality milk in the first place. And I think that's...
I was going to say, so Solstice what's the size? How long do you mature it for?
Yeah, so Solstice is 200 grams. We mature it for 4 weeks. Normally we would sell it, and would expect it to have 4 weeks shelf life at that point. What we've done in the competition is we've sent cheese to people 2 days old. So we've literally made it, brined it, and we've sent it. So we'll have our geotrichum in it, and it will have our brevilinums in it. But what they do with it is entirely up to them. And
so you've added those cultures to the milk, have you?
We add those cultures to the milk. Yeah, you can't. It's really hard to add that later on, if that makes sense.
And what do you normally wash? Do you wash with brine or?
We wash with brine. We use Glastonbury spring water. We used to just use tap water, but the French explained that wasn't good enough. And I thought, well, I'm not buying Evian. We've got really good spring water nearby from the bottom of Glastonbury Tor, so that works for us. And the beauty with rind washing is you can do lots of different things. You start with a simple cheese, but how often you wash it, what you wash it with, the temperatures, humidities, the speed of the air movement has a big effect as well. So all those things will vary what people come up with. I mean, last year they did it, and it was interesting to see some of them were spectacular for good reasons. Some of them were spectacular for not so good reasons. but I like the fact that everyone's trying, and I think this is the exciting thing about the competition. And Ben was saying you start off with a basic, a sort of white sheet of paper of the cheese, and then you as the affineur put your mark on it. And I think it's a very good way for people who haven't got the time to get into cheese making or the space to get into cheese making to actually buy a fresh cheese. I mean, we're all happy, I imagine most of us are happy to sell young cheese to people because we get our money quicker, and create something themselves in a relatively small space, to be honest. So although most of the entrants I think are cheesemakers and cheesemongers, actually this is something that the general public can do. It's not. You won't get it right the first time, guarantee you that. Or if you get it right the first time, you won't get it right the second time. But this is something that the general public can do.
We need to just put in at this point that you should obviously speak to your environmental health officer if you're going to start making washed rind cheeses at home.
Oh yeah, no, only for your own consumption.
I could see Tracy looking a bit rabbit in headlights there. I thought I better just put that in.
Where is he going with this one? And what does it say on your t-shirt? Can you stand up? What does it say? I can see it says cheese. Brilliant. I could see the word cheese.
It's my favourite t-shirt. Some of my members of staff bought it for me a couple of years ago, and I wear it with pride everywhere I go.
Actually, I mean, washed rind cheeses are some of the trickier of the cheeses to work with, aren't they? Because
hygiene's really important. Everything's got to be clean.
Yeah, and also because you're handling the cheeses a lot in the maturing room, aren't you? Yeah. So when you wash a cheese, you literally are picking the cheese up and smearing it with the brine.
Yeah, I mean, we use brushes, sponges, cloths. You know, I mean, when I was in France, they were using little Japanese makeup brushes because they're really fine. So, you know, sometimes when you first start washing the cheese, you want a good hard scrub to sort of open it up a bit. And then once you've got the rind you're looking for, you've got to look after it. It's not easy, but
no,
it is
these
extremely
are good.
enjoyable.
And also, I always feel with those, whenever I buy a wash drying cheese and put it in my fridge, you know, I'll do everything I can to protect it from the airflow, but they dry out so easily compared to other cheeses. And so, is that something in a maturing room with wash drying cheeses? You really need it humid and
it's a combination of humidity and airspeed. You don't want high air speeds. You know, some people put a good fan, they don't want to blow air over it, but that dries the cheese, and that's the problem you get in your fridge. It's the air movement and the dehumidifying in the chilling in the fridge is the same as a dehumidifier. So as it chills your fridge, it pulls moisture out. So, you know, the easiest way to do it is put it in a tub, a sort of little mesh tray in the bottom with a little wet cloth underneath it, and that you've got a mini cheese cave.
So for some of our cheesemongers who might not have specialist cheese maturing rooms, you know, they're going to have had to, if they want to keep the cheese in that washed rind category, they're going to have had to really work on sort of protecting it really from the harsh environment of the sort of commercial fridge.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, and you'll see it in cheese shops as well. You know, I'm a big fan of well glass wrapped cheese because that really does keep the cheese at its best. But I'm rubbish at it, and I take my hat off to cheesemongers who do it so well. But it makes a massive difference to the quality of how the cheese is kept. Yeah.
And one of the things with wash rind cheeses we've seen a lot of, and we mentioned it with Tornagus with Ben, you know, using wine with herbs in on Gorwydd to make a different cheese. You can mix up what you put into the brine. So you're just using brine, but you could.
No, we're not just using brine.
Putting all sorts in, could they?
We also use Somerset cider brandy.
Oh, okay.
So you start off with brine, and you slowly change the ratio of the brine, and then you start adding cider brandy in. And I think last year's winner, Fine Cheese, did a lovely smoky whiskey, and you could really taste that smokiness in the rind as well as the beautiful rind. So and that's a real skill. You know, that takes a lot of patience to do that.
Does it have to be alcohol? I mean, you think about alcohol. No. There could be wine, beer, sake, whiskey, brandy, you name it. But could you look at, you know, I don't know, elderflower?
You could do whatever. Like you could do matcha tea. That's all very fashionable these days. Green teas, all those sorts of things. Kombucha, anything that's got a bit of flavour to it. I think the primary reason wash rinds use alcohol is back to the Trappist monks. You know, that was part of their meditation was rubbing the cheese in the beer that they made, and in those days beer was safer to drink than water. You know, and that's why I still drink a lot of it. I think it's the best safety thing.
Very wise, Roger. Very wise. Right, brilliant. That's really interesting, really fascinating. I can't wait to see what the entries are going to be, because I suspect there's going to be all sorts of.
I'm looking forward to it too. Yeah, definitely, it'd be great.
Brilliant. So let's move on. We'll come back to you, as we said at the end. Where are we going next? Oh, we're going blue. Let's move to Nottinghamshire and to Robin.
Hello, Robin. Here we go. Hello, Robin.
Hello.
So we're talking. In previous years we were talking Stilton, but not this year. So tell us, Robin, about Cropwell Bishop and the cheeses you make.
So, well, funnily enough, my grandfather used to make cheese in Somerset, and many years ago, and then he bought the dairy at Cropwell Bishop in the late 40s, just after the war. And we've been making cheese there ever since. And I joined the company about 20 years ago. And we used to make cheddar and all the other English territorial cheeses. And in the last sort of 30 to 40 years, very much under my father and my uncle's stewardship, we focus on blue cheese. So we've predominantly made blue Stilton, blue Shropshire, and then I developed a soft blue cheese about 10 or 12 years ago called Beauval. But it's the blue Shropshire that is very much in focus today. So it is a lovely orange hue cheese, which I think makes it quite different to some of the other cheeses, perhaps that some of the affineurs will get their hands on, which is quite fun. So yeah,
the orange comes from the addition of annatto to give you that.
Yeah, so we've already added the annatto to the milk, and then the cheese, it has been sent out before any rind has developed on it as well, which is important. So it's completely bare cheese. So when the affineurs mature their cheese, they will get their own different molds growing on it, which will be hopefully different to the ones that we get in our dairy, in our maturing rooms.
And in terms of the blue cultures, to get the veining, so you've added the Penicillium Roqueforti to the
That's
milk,
right.
but
So
they've not been spiked. Is that right?
No. So that's another big job for the affineurs, which is probably the key thing for blue Shropshire, is to get the blue development within the cheese. So the blue mold has already been added to the milk, so it's in the cheese, but it's completely dormant, and it will stay dormant until it gets access to oxygen, and it will only get access to oxygen if the cheese is pierced. So so I suppose blue Shropshire is very much a mold ripened cheese, and if we don't get that blue development within the cheese won't be that good. That is the key element. That's the key thing that the affineurs have got to get right. They've got to get blue development.
Typically, you call it blue Shropshire. I've always called it Shropshire blue. Am I been saying it wrong all these years?
Do you know what? I've no idea which is right.
Okay. I think in the cheese library it's Shropshire blue. We might have to look at that, Tracy.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
So typically, when do you spike at Cropwell Bishop, and how long do you then mature it afterwards?
So yeah, we tend to leave the cheese for about 5 weeks before we spike it or skewer it or pierce it. Lots of different terminology names for doing it. So we leave it for 5 weeks, and then we pierce the cheese, and then we leave it for another week, and then we pierce it again. So
and then it would be how old when you send it out in total?
Probably about 12 weeks.
And is that so? Would you pierce your Stilton at 5 weeks as well?
Yeah,
similar schedule.
One of the every Stilton maker makes blue Shropshire, and the reason for that is that the fundamental recipe and the maturing process behind blue Shropshire is very similar to Stilton, and that's why Stilton makers tend to make the cheese side by side with Stilton.
So 2 questions. First one, why do you double spike or double pierce? And secondly, will the annatto make any difference, do you think, in the maturation?
Yeah, so we double pierce the cheese because we've always found that one piercing is never enough. So you don't tend to see a lot of blue development from the first pierce. When you pierce the cheese for the second time after another week, you then see much more blue developing through the cheese. So if you pierce it once, the cheese is going to take forever to mature, and it may not even blue up enough to be a proper cheese. It probably won't. It just won't have enough mold growing in it to break down the fats and the proteins and develop into a nice soft cheese. That's the thing. The annatto, the annatto does have a lot of influence in the cheese, and it's difficult to know whether the annatto actually adds flavor or changes the flavor of the cheese versus a Stilton, for example. It may be down to just your brain being tricked by the color of the orange, and you think it tastes different. It's really hard to know. But if you drank annatto, it doesn't taste of much, right? So we're not intentionally adding flavor to the cheese by adding annatto. It's more to do with the color. The color change is the big reason to add it, I think.
But I wondered if Shropshire blue matures slightly differently to Stilton. You know, do they mature almost pretty much exactly?
They mature in a very similar way. So if we take our Beauvale, which is a very different type of blue cheese, so it's soft in nature as opposed to blue Shropshire, which is, I suppose, a semi-hard cheese. So we're looking at very different temperatures, very different humidities. The recipe is different from the very start. We add different blue molds, So it's a completely different type of cheese, and therefore the maturation of the cheese also is different. So if you're making a soft cheese, you really want cooler temperatures. For a semi-hard cheese like Blue Shropshire, we're looking at a maturing temperature of between 12 and 15 degrees. So maybe 55 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that.
That's warm, isn't it?
Which is warm. And you need that warmth because it's the warmth that gets everything going within the cheese for a Blue Shropshire that does have quite a mature flavour, and it has a sort of deep depth of flavour to it. And you need that heat to get things moving within the cheese. You need it to get the bacteria moving and to get those flavours developing. In fact, then when you come to pierce cheese, you probably want to cool the temperatures a little bit, because the blue will grow actually in cool temperatures, but you just want to make sure that the curd doesn't break down too quickly. What you don't want is a cheese that that blues up a little bit and then the curd breaks down. And when the curd breaks down, the blue won't grow within that curd because it's already broken down and developed, and then you will get a less blue cheese.
Yeah, it's interesting. And humidity for Shropshire Blue would be.
Yeah, humidity is important. So one of the main problems that we would have, let's say if we didn't have enough humidity in our maturing rooms, we would find our cheese will crack. So it's really important that the affineurs try and introduce humidity into the areas where they're storing the cheese. I mean, they could even wrap the cheese if they wanted to. But the cheese will crack in dry environments, so they've got to look out for that, definitely.
How do you increase humidity? Is it a case of you have controls that you can use?
Yeah, I'm still trying to work that out. It's really hard. It's very difficult. I mean, we're lucky because we're going to have loads of cheese in our maturing room, right? And that, by its very nature, increases humidity. But if you've just got so occasionally for fun, we'll take a cheese out of the dairy and we'll mature it in the office just for fun. And it will go like a bullet. That's the problem, because there's nothing. The air around it just sucks everything out of it. A bit like Roger was saying with the fridge. So it is really hard, and I don't necessarily have the answer. But
cheeses like to be kept with other cheeses, basically.
They do.
That's interesting. Brilliant. Okay, I have to say, Robin, because I've been judging this for a few years now, and I think that getting your cheeses to blue has been something that contestants have found quite difficult.
Yeah.
Perhaps they've not been double piercing. Maybe this is the secret.
I think it's better to over pierce the cheese than under pierce the cheese.
Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe, they've still got a bit of time. If any of the contestants are watching, it might be worth. And just finally, I mean, what do you pierce with? Because people were using sort of knitting needles and kebab skewers, some of the contestants, because they don't have professional equipment. So what would you use in?
So a knitting needle is a really good thing to use. So if we're developing a cheese, and so in the past, if we've developed a new cheese, we've always used knitting needles. What we actually use in the dairy is stainless steel needles, but knitting needles is a great alternative, work just as well. But you just got to look at the width of the knitting needle. So the width of the needle is really important. So it's
not too wide.
Not too wide. So it's a difficult one to get right.
There we go. I never thought we'd be talking about knitting tonight. There we go. I mean, these takes you in exciting new areas. Brilliant, Robin. Thank you very much. Right, let's move on to Jonny, because I'm conscious of time.
Thanks, Robin.
Brilliant. That's really interesting.
I think it is the hardest cheese.
I think it's hard. I have to say, judging the blue cheeses, I got sort of new respect. I've always had respect for cheesemakers, but for the blue cheesemakers, I realised it is tricky getting that blue mould to grow.
Well, and it's 8 kilos. Those big boys.
Yeah,
they're 8 kilos. So it's a lot of curd to get right.
I'll tell you what else is tricky is getting a brie style cheese to the point of oozy perfection, which Jonny Crickmore has managed at Fen Farm Dairy. So, Jonny, tell us a bit about Baron Bigod. I'm sure everyone knows about Baron Bigod, but tell us a bit about you and the farm and the cheese.
Okay, well, in a nutshell, because it could go on for like 2 hours just telling you, but we started making cheese 12 years ago now. And at the time, we just had a very much commercial dairy farm with a herd of Holsteins. And we came up with this crazy idea of trying to make a British take on Brie de Meaux. and we researched, went and visited Cheesemakers, and eventually, after meeting one person and then that person passes on another person, we got in touch with this French cheesemaker called Ivan Larcher, and he agreed to work with us on the condition that we changed our cows, because he didn't think the fats and the proteins of our milk was good enough. So because I was all sort of really, up for it, we did just that. We went to France and bought a small herd of Montbéliard cows, which is, if you ever listen to the Archers on Radio 4, BBC Radio 4, that story about those, one of the Archer people, one of the families got into cheese making. Thankfully, they made blue cheese, not brie, but they have Montbéliard cows too. So we got these cows, set up the building, and had a go at making this equivalent to French Brie de Meaux.
And so, because you make Baron Bigod. Oh, here we go. I was going to say you make it in different sizes. So tell us about the different sort of options you've got, and then what's been sent to the contestants.
Yeah, so we originally made it this cheese here, the 3 kilogram wheel, but as time went on, people were asking for a smaller cheese, so we then made this 1 kilogram wheel, and eventually there was other people who said, actually, could you do something a bit smaller for me, because 1 kilo is too much. So we then made this 250 gram.
The cheeses are shrinking, Johnny.
Yeah.
And you do a heart-shaped one as well, don't you?
Yeah, well, then Valentine's Day came along and someone came to the farm and said, could you make me a cheese like those French Neuchâtels, so I could give it to my wife to tell her how much I love her? So we made this heart cheese, which we call Baron Bigod, I Love You. So yeah, then we actually end up making a truffle brie as well. So yeah, sorry, we make loads of the things now.
And what's gone out to the contestants? Which size?
So it is the 1 kilogram cheese.
Right.
That cheese is probably our most popular cheese, to be fair. They are all made slightly different. So the 3 kilogram is probably closer to the 1 kg, but the 250 gram is a slightly different recipe. Again, that's a long story, but the 1 kilogram, this cheese has had all the cultures added to it. Bit similar to Robin, it's got all of those cultures there, but whether the Affineurs are capable of bringing all of those ripening cultures out is a different question. So you've got surface ripening cultures, and you've got the cultures which affect the paste inside. So, and where we kind of finish is the point where the cheese is made and we've salted it, and the whey is pretty much drained from that cheese about 2 days later, and then that's the point where we've sent those cheeses out. So from this point on, pretty much anything can happen to this cheese depending on the way the temperature is of the rooms, for how many days, and for the humidity of the room, and for when you wrap it, and the dryness of the rind when you wrap it, what paper you use. Are you wrapping it once? Are you going to wrap it again? Do you put it in a box? All of these things will have an effect on that cheese.
So when you mature a 1 kilo Baron Bigod, what are the steps that you take in the maturing room?
So what we do is, from the point where the cheese has gone out, that's more like sort of 16, 17 degrees. We then bring it down to something more like 11, 12 degrees. And we keep it there for about a fortnight, of which this is the period where you get the surface ripening molds. The two main families for us are Geotrichum and Penicillium candidum. And those two form, but they will only form together if you get your humidity and your temperature right. If the cheese is too dry, you might get more Penicillium. If the cheese is too wet, you might get more Geotrichum. So after that, we then give them a brief spell in a sort of what we call a drying room, which dries the rind out. And the reason we do that is actually we could end up resulting in creating a washed rind cheese if you leave the rind too wet. So it has a little brief spell in the drying room. Even that changes through the year depending on how dry the cheese is. So we may dry the cheese for 24 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours, or maybe even not at all. And then it goes into a wrap, and we choose to wrap our cheese twice. So we wrap it, we put it in a box, we then put it into a cooler temperature, more like 3 to 4 degrees. And then a couple of weeks later, we then get it out, unwrap it, and rewrap it again in another paper. And the reason we do that is because we know that between day 16 and day 30 is that period, the cheese is like motoring. So it's really working hard. So all of the things going on in that cheese are creating heat. And we choose to, at that period, put a paper around the cheese to kind of release some of that energy. There's so much energy being like created from that cheese at that period. So once we rewrap it, the paper doesn't need to release the energy, the heat quite so much. So therefore, at that point, we can hold more of the moisture in and things like that. So it's really, as all cheese are, it's really complicated. To get it to be the same cheese, like consistently, these things, every one of those little things will change the cheese. So that's why, like all the other cheesemakers here are the same. You find a recipe and you stick to it, and and if that means like every day at 11:15 you have to shut that window there, that's because it made the cheese better, and as soon as you left the window open, it went wrong. So you always shut the window at 11:15.
Well, of course, and I hope all the affineurs who are taking part are listening to this. 11:15, shut the window. Your cheese will be absolutely wonderful.
No, I completely made the window thing up.
There's people writing it down now, Johnny.
I really hope that people are not going to be shutting windows at 11:15. It could all go badly wrong.
No, but it's interesting. But people might decide they don't want to make Baron Bigod. They want to make something completely different. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe some of them will wash the rind, or last year they were wrapping it in leaves and seaweed and all sorts of stuff for being.
I think I absolutely loved last year. I loved seeing how our cheese and all of the cheeses, which I know so well, seeing the changes in those cheeses. It's crazy once and the thing is, we never get to do that ourselves because we're trying to make the same cheese all the time. So it's so fun seeing the way the cheese changes.
Yeah, well, brilliant. Tracy, should we? I think Mary might have to drop off because she's got a train to catch, which is a shame. But should we have a bit of a group discussion and just to finish off?
Yeah, we just want to let me remove your spotlight as well.
And put us on a gallery, maybe.
There you go.
There we go.
I think, Mary, apologies. She has said she has had to go, so to catch that train. So apologies.
I had so just this is a bit of a free for all, really. At the end, I sort of wondered if you've got any top tips for our contestants about what I suppose for some of the cheeses, the cheddar particularly, it's almost a bit late in the day, but maybe not. Maybe there's a bit of time still to make a difference to a cheese, in the last few weeks of its maturation, but also around some of the kit that people might be using or you found to be really useful. Has anyone sort of come across an incredible fridge or just a type of paper for wrapping a cheese or some kind of go on, Roger.
One of the big problems with fridges at home is they're too cold. So if you're looking to mature or do something special with cheese with a home fridge, you can get a little controller on Amazon that you plug your fridge into and then put a sensor in the fridge, so it keeps your fridge warmer. Effectively, it doesn't come on as often. That helps stop the cheese drying out so much. Or if you're posh like Keith, you perhaps put it in your wine fridge where you can regulate the temperature better.
Yeah, well, because the wine fridges, you can sort of set the temperature as you like, really, but they also have humidity controls as well sometimes, don't they?
I don't know. I don't have a wine fridge. So.
Oh, you're a beer man. Yeah, I forgot. Anyone else? Anyone else got any tips for our contestants of what, just a few kind of sort of, I suppose they've only got a few weeks left, really. So in the latter stages of maturation, what can you do to improve the cheese?
Well,
I think at this stage it's a case of not screwing it up.
Yeah.
I think it's been mentioned by everyone, but humidity is key, and probably the simplest way to keep humidity up. You can get fancy systems, but we put buckets of water down on the floor. Obviously, in your house or in your own fridge, you might not be putting buckets of water down, but something as simple as that. So Roger suggested a damp cloth underneath a little gridded tray so you can raise it up. But humidity is crucial. I think every cheesemaker has mentioned how important humidity is. Possibly it's a bit late in the day if your cheese has started drying out, it might be hard to bring it back, but it can't hurt to play around with the humidity and try and keep it up.
Yeah, the other thing, I think one of the things we've found hard is we mature Solstice for 4 weeks and then we sell it. But obviously for the Affineur of the year, it needs to be ripe on that day. And that's a challenge in its own right, getting the cheese, as you mentioned, Patrick, not oozing off the table, but you want it in the optimum condition, which is the skill of cheesemongers, not necessarily a skill of cheesemakers. So I think that the cheesemaker competitors out there is not maturing the soft cheeses too quickly. Because
Jonny,
once it's matured, you can't pull it back.
I mean, that's sort of the thing with a brie, isn't it? Is that everybody's looking. Well, personally, I quite like a bit of chalk in the middle, just a tiny little bit, because I quite like the contrast. But getting a brie style cheese, getting Baron Bigod to that kind of oozy perfection, you must have a lot of insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, if you don't quite get the temperature right, when we get to the day, your cheese may have gone over the hill. We call that a dying cheese, and it starts to taste really strong of ammonia. And we've actually experimented with maturing cheese like much higher, like at 16, 18 degrees all the way through, and it matures much faster. The goo comes out quicker, but then you lack the depth of flavor. So it's just interesting stuff, but just speeding it up doesn't necessarily, it doesn't, warmer temperature doesn't necessarily, make the flavor better. It speeds it up, but I think probably the flavor's better if it's matured slower.
Yeah, I mean, you can do, and I think you played around with this many years ago. Is in France they have brie noir, don't they? Where they take a brie and then mature it for like a year until it's black and hard, and they dip it in their coffee. I think it's a completely different cheese to the brie that we all know and love. And have you tried that with Baron Bigod? Have you? We've done
dried it out. Baron Blacks. We have got our oldest Baron Bigoders from 2018 still in the chiller. But it's interesting you say that. We have actually this year for the first time we've done a proper batch of Black Barons, which will be released on the week running up to Halloween. So
there we go. Exclusive story like that. And they'll be really, they're properly sort of rock hard, are they?
Yeah, we're maturing them the way. So we've done a little bit of research with doing them properly this time, but they're going to be like the Brie Noir. So you've just got to get it out on Halloween and eat it with coffee, black coffee. It does actually taste really good with black coffee. Strange. Yeah.
No, that'll keep the evil spirits away, I'm sure.
We thought if we're gonna we're only gonna do it as a bit of fun, but if we're gonna release it, what better time of the year to release it than
perfect.
And Robin, I was talking. One of the contestants told me that they've taken your cheese and are talking about humidity, Ben. They'd put it in a box with a pint of beer, which I thought was quite an interesting. Have you ever tried that? Have you ever taken a
No,
Shropshire and sort of matured it with beer?
No, but what we have done is what you can do is you put the cheese in a big bowl and you basically hollow out a little bit at the top, and then you pour in a bottle of sherry, brandy, whatever suits your
Yes, please.
taste.
Yes.
And then over you have to keep it warm, and then over the several days the alcohol then drips through the whole cheese in the middle, and you've got they do it a lot actually in Holland, and you've got this amazing alcoholic cheese, which so that's just a bit of fun. But one thing I was going to say was taste the cheese. Okay, so get a cheese iron, put a cheese iron in, and just see how the cheese is maturing, see how it's performing, and taste it. That's one thing you can do with a big cheese. You can taste it and then hide it, because no one then can see where you've tasted it.
Yeah.
So, so keep doing that. That's what we do the whole time. I mean, that's half my job, is tasting cheese, honestly. So you must be tasting it literally every couple of days. Every couple of days, taste it and see how it's performing and see how it's maturing, and and then you can make adjustments as to how it's going. That would be my advice.
It's a bit more difficult when they've only got one cheese, though. Otherwise, it'll just be all holes.
Well, you can. There are ways of doing it. Yeah, just take a tiny bit.
Tiny bit. Don't be greedy.
Yeah.
Shall we just quickly, because we're coming to an, we just tell them about the judging, how that works, because it is very strict judging. There's 10 judges this year, coming from around the world, to judge this competition, and they're seasoned judges. But Patrick, do you want me to share the form, or are you happy? Can you remember what?
No, share the form. I think that'd be really interesting, because people have asked to see it actually, and I think that would be great. But
we do 2 rounds of judging, don't we?
Well, probably 3 actually, to find the supreme champion. We'll go. There'll be tasted. So everything's blind tasted, so we don't know who's done. I mean, obviously we know where the cheeses are from, but we don't know who's matured them.
And you can see the weighting of points here. So Keith's question about, is it just on a whim of what's going to be Instagrammable or TikTokable? It's state. So at the beginning, when they receive their cheeses, they have then 7 days to send me back their statement of intent, and that's what it says on the tin. They have to tell me what they are intending to do with that cheese. So I do know quite a few secrets now of what those competitors are going to do, and they have to tell us how they're going to do it. And then just before the competition, the week before, they send me the second half of the statement about what's happened and what the results are and what they changed over the time, and that goes to the judges.
But I think that's a really, really important and clever bit of the judging process, because they have to make their commitment early as to what they want to do, because you could luck out, and mature a cheese, and it turns out you're trying to mature it one way, it goes completely the other, and it's delicious. So we, as judges, we will read at the beginning, this is what you wanted to achieve, and when we taste the cheese, we'll be so, well, did they meet their own brief, if you like? So they set their own brief. I mean, it could still be an incredible cheese, but it's nothing like what they thought it was going to be, and that's fine. So flavor, the key thing is it delicious, and that's why you get 20 points for it. But people who can show that our plan was to do X, Y, and Z, and at the end of the process we achieved X, Y, and Z, you're going to get really high scores on that statement of intent. And I think the more ambitious, great if someone said, we want to, we're going to take Baron Bigod and we're going to make Baron Bigod perfectly. Great, I suppose that's wonderful, but really there's not a lot of innovation there. Baron Bigod is out there and he's fantastic, and Jonny does an incredible job with it. So we are looking for people to do different things. It doesn't have to be like completely wacky. I don't think you're going to get, if you put Parma violets in Gorwydd Caerphilly, trust me, I have seen cheeses with Parma violets in. I just need to point that out there. I have seen flavored cheeses that way. But for me, I think it would then, in terms of the flavor, I suspect it would lose balance. You know, so you've got to be careful with doing crazy, innovative things, because actually, if you end up with a cheese that doesn't have complexity or balance, then you're going to lose points there. So it's a fine line, really, of doing something new, but not making it a gimmick. That's not going to impress anyone, I don't think.
And on the day, what happens is the judges go and judge the appearance as well. They prejudge, then we hide the judges. They get taken away to another place, and they then the competitors come back and cut the cheeses, and that's lots of drama, because then it's, has it blued? Is it a disaster inside? Which is why Robin is saying, iron it, taste it, test it, all the rest of it. So that covers that question.
Some people are asking, are there any cheeses that are commercially available that have, you know, have sort of been inspired by Affineur of the Year? And Bert's have launched
cheese, Claire Burt, yeah, she's launched Bidley Blue. So her Bidley Blue won with Robin's Cropwell Bishop Blue Stilton last year. She won, and she treated the cheese in the similar way to she treats some of her blue cheeses, by wrapping it in leaves and washing it in cider. And she's now created that cheese and named it Bidley Blue. So coming out of this competition is new commercial cheeses, which is fantastic. And we'd love to see more of that. Quicke did a collaboration with Brindisa, and they did, you know, you were talking earlier about the paprika rubbed cheese. They did a small version of that, and they're looking at the commerciality of that at the moment. But I think Jonny would be keen to collaborate with someone for a commercial cheese going forward.
We did. I think Paxton's took the cheese what they created last year and did a like a little mini run on
special.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Claire is going for it full bore with the Bidley Blue, and I'm really.
It's a lovely cheese, Bidley Blue. It's very nice. It's a bit like a sort of a blue Cheshire wrapped in vine leaves that have been soaked in cider, I think. And it's really good. It had this really interesting breakdown underneath the leaves. There was quite sort of boozy and actually had almost a bit like, you know, with Gorwydd, where you get that sort of two-tone texture. She had something similar. Well, yeah, but you know, you get the softer breakdown, and you've got the rind itself. So it's an interesting cheese, that, which is what it's all about, really. It says here, well, Roger would never say no to a new cheese. So you know, he's writing these ideas.
Roger likes his new cheeses. Well, I think we've gone a little bit over time, but thank you for everybody who have joined us tonight as the guests. I'm sorry we've run over a little bit, but a massive thank you to all of you wonderful, iconic cheesemakers for joining us tonight. We're just so excited that you take part in this competition, because it is a little bit of a risk, putting your precious cheeses out there for people to either create amazing things or decimate. And so thank you for that. But a big thank you to Patrick for being our head judge and coming tonight and taking your time out to host this webinar as well.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor. It's just fascinating. I love it. It's so fascinating. So I cannot wait for the final.
Watch, he'll be having a new book out soon about affinage.
Hey, there's an idea. If there are any publishers watching this, you know, just feel free to get in touch.
No, but thank you for joining, and we really hope you can come and be with us on the 3rd of June. There's tickets on sale on the website. St Mary's is in Marylebone, really easy to get to, and we're going to have welcome drinks from Liberty Wines and Affineur wines. So a rosé sparkling, that's come through today. We've got Druve from Tempest Foods is joining us with his charcuterie. Round Corner Brewery are back again, boys, with their beer. Roger's happy. Fantastic beer from Melton Mowbray. So we're really pleased with that.
And
obviously,
most importantly, Tracy, people who come to the event can taste all of the cheeses and cast their vote for there's the People's Choice Award, isn't there?
There is. There's most definitely the Peter's Choice Award is up for grabs, and people vote, and we're going to do high-tech voting this year rather than the paper voting. So we're really pleased with that as well.
Brilliant. I look forward to it.
But thank you, everybody. Good night. Enjoy the hot weather. 3rd of June. Yes. Did I say?
Yeah. 3rd of June, Marylebone.
Did I say something else? 3rd of June, Marylebone. See you there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Sleep well.